Module 2, Lesson 5, Python Control Structures. Control flow statements in programming language are simply keywords that are used to simplify complex logic. For example, assuming you have 3 students, it will be easy to compare who is the greatest among them. What about if you have 500 students? That might be a little hard, and it might take you even a longer time as compared to the 3 students. This is where control flow statements comes in handy. For example, here I'm just using 3 students. In this case, I'm using the name Kevin and he has scored 56. The second one is Jane and has scored 78, and the third one is Steven and has scored 67. So, for example, if I want to compare between Jane and Kevin, who got the highest, I will use what we call the if statement. In this case, I will say something like if Jane is greater than Kevin, then do what? Then let's say print Jane is older. So in this case, if I run my code, it prints Jane is older. But let us take a minute and let us understand how our code works. This if statement evaluates this expression that is inside here. And you see this expression that is inside here, it is a logical operator, which is the greater than operator. In this case, if Jane is greater than Kevin, this expression will evaluate to true. And as such, if this evaluates to true, then and only then, this code down here will be executed. What about if I say something like this? By the way, it's because Jane is 78 and Kevin is 56. Therefore, 78 is greater than 56, and this becomes true. What about if I reverse and say Kevin is greater than Jane, then print this. And now if I run my code, you see it does not print anything, because Kevin, who is 56, is less than Jane, who is 78. And so this expression inside this if statement evaluates to false, and hence this code is not executed. And now, let us say I want to print more than 2 statements. Let me just go back and write Jane, Kevin. So let us say I want to print 2 statements. I can say if Jane is greater than Kevin, then I can use what we call the else, which the else statement is just like saying if this does not execute, then execute anything that is in the else statement. And in this case, if Jane is greater than Kevin, execute this statement. But if Jane is less than, in this case, if he is younger than Kevin, then execute the statement down here. In this case, let's say we just print Kevin is older. Now, look at this. If this, which will means Jane is greater than Kevin, it will print Jane is older. But if Kevin is greater than Jane, then it will not execute this statement. It will come to this else statement and execute this print. Let us try. In this case, if you run the code, you'll find that it prints Jane is older. Why? Because Jane, who is 78 years, is older than Kevin, who is 56, and therefore this first statement is executed. And this second statement is not executed. And what about if I change like this? If I say Kevin, and just put here Jane, and I change their marks. Let me now put Kevin to be 78 and Jane to be 56. Now if I run this code, let us just do like this. Now if I run this code, you see it prints Kevin is older. Why? Because now if I come to this if statement, Kevin is 78 and Jane is 56, which means Kevin is older than Jen. Hence, this evaluates to false, because I'm saying here that Kevin is less than Jen, which is false. Therefore, this statement will never be executed. And in this case, our statement, which is in the else keyword, is then executed. And now let us say again, if I wish to compare now these three guys here, how can I do this? I can do it by combining the if and else statement and another else if statement. In this case, I can just do something like this. If I can say Kevin, I want to find the greatest person here, or rather the oldest. Kevin is greater than Jane. If Kevin is greater than Jane, this is the first statement. But now I'm assuming here that Kevin is greater than Jane. And so if that is true, then I can do also like and Kevin is greater than this guy Stephen. Now I want you to check these codes. This is Kevin. I can say just to print, let's say Kevin is the oldest. But now, since I'm comparing between the three guys, I will use what we call the if statement. It's just written like that. I'm going to explain in a minute, so don't be worried. So here we'll have Jane. Now I'm comparing Jane if is greater than Kevin. And if that is true again, I want to compare him also to Stephen. In this case, I'll do like this. Say Jane is greater than Stephen. And in this case, I'll just print Jane is the oldest. And then I'll say else. Then I'll say else. I'll say Stephen is the greatest. So in this case, now how is this code executing? Let me just write a comment here. Find the oldest. Find the oldest. This should be oldest, not greatest. Oldest. Now, the way this code is executing, you see now here, I'm taking the guy Kevin and I'm now testing if he's greater than Jen. And if this is true, I will also test if Kevin is greater than Stephen. In this case, I've used an AND operator. And you remember while we are talking about the logical operators, I said that an AND statement will execute true only and only if both sides of the operators are true. In this case, I'm comparing if Kevin is greater than Jen, then if this is true, and also Kevin is greater than Stephen, and then this is true, now this or statement inside here will be true, which means this print statement will be executed. What if I want to check if Jen is greater than the two, Kevin and Stephen? What I will do is simply, I'll do if Jen is greater than Kevin and Jen is greater than Stephen, then print Jen is the oldest. In this case, Jen will be the oldest. And if in either case, Kevin is not the oldest, Jen is not the oldest, it simply means that Stephen is the oldest. That's why I have not used the if statement here. I do not need to compare again with Kevin and Stephen. If these two guys are not the oldest, then it means Stephen is the oldest. In this case, let us run this code and see what it will give us. Now, in our case here, Kevin, Jen, and Stephen, Kevin is the oldest. So if I run this code, let me just comment this out so that it might not confuse you. Let me just run the code again. You see now it prints Kevin is the oldest. Why? Because Kevin here is 78, Jen is 56, and Stephen is 67. What about if I change now Jen to be the oldest and change maybe to be 90? Now if I run this code again, you see that it prints Jen is the oldest because now Jen is 90, Kevin is 78, and Stephen is 67. What about, let us say that Stephen chooses to eat badly and healthy, and now he ages fast as compared to the two, and now let's say he becomes 120 years. Now if I run this code, you see it prints Stephen is the oldest, because when you consider here now Stephen is the oldest between the three. I hope you have understood this logic. It's as simple as that. If statement is only used to check if an expression executes to true or false, and then execute the statement that follows. And that is why they are called control flow structures. So guys, the next control structure that we are going to look is the while control structure, or rather the while loop. And the way you can think of a while loop, you can think of it like a statement as long as let's say 2 is less than 10, then do something. In this case, the example that I'm going to use, let us say I want to print the multiples of 2 between the number 0 to 10. What can I do? The condition here will be as long as I'm between the range of 0 to 10, then print the multiples. Let me just create two variables. The first one will be I, which will be equal to 0, and which will be equal to 2. And then to use my while loop, I just need to write the statement while. Now I need to pass the condition inside this statement, and in this case I'm starting from 0, which is I, and I'm going up to 10. That's why I'm putting a less than or equal to, so that it can execute even the 10 statement. I do not want it to execute between 0 to 9, but 0 to 10. So now I'll say like that. And now if this condition is true, then you can print, in this case what I can print n, which will be 2, and then I can print times I, which will be the number 0, 1, 2, 3 up to 10. And in this case I also want to print an equal sign, and now at last I need to perform the function. Now one more thing before this code executes, you also need to add another code here that in this case will be adding our I. Our I now is start here from 0. We have nothing to tell it that once we have performed, or rather run the code while you are in 0, you need to increment. This is the code that tells I's like that. Let us just run the code and I will explain better, and you'll also be able to understand clearly. If you run the code, you see down here you print 2 times 0 is equals to 0, 2 times 1 is equals to 2, up to 10, 2 times 10 is equals to 20. What is happening here is that the first time this code executes, it becomes I here, because since our I is 0, it tells 0, is it less than or equal to 10, which is true. Now this code is executed. This code right here, the print statement here, is executed, which prints 2 times I, which is 0, and then perform the function, which is 0. But now down here, this statement now increments our I to 1. So it comes I, which is 1 now. Is it less than or equal to 10? Yes. Now it performs this print statement with I being replaced with 1 here. In this case, it will print 2. It will continue like that until it reaches 10. And when this variable, or rather I, reaches 10, it will come here. 10, is it equals or less than to 10, which is true. Then it will execute this statement and then increment by 1. And in this case, I will become 11. And when it comes back to the while statement, it will test whether 11 is less than or equal to 10, which will be false. And else, our loop here will break out. It won't perform any further functionality, or rather it won't run this code any further. And hence, that is how simply the while loop works. Just think of it as a statement as long as 5 is equals to 10, do something. That is the way the while statement works. The next control structure that we are going to look is what we call the for loop. I want you to think of the for loop as an iterator. By an iterator, I mean, for example, assume you have a list of 1,000 animals, and you want, for each animal, you want to execute a print statement. For example, you want to print, let's say the first animal is cow, you want to print cow is an animal. The second animal is cat, cat is an animal. How can you perform this functionality in one statement? This is whereby the loop statement, or rather the for loop, comes in handy. It enables you to loop through all this list in a very simple manner. Let us just create a list. I hope you remember how we create a list. In this case, let me say just animal list, and let us assign it. Let us say cat, let's say dog, let us say maybe monkey, let us say cow, and let us say maybe lion, let us say maybe leopard. And now, this is just a simple example to help you understand how the for loop works. And let us assume that I need to print a statement that all these variables that are in this list, they are animal. The way I can use the for loop, I can just write it for, then I can say for, then I pass here a placeholder. For example, x in. Now I pass the name of my list here, which is animal underscore list. And then the thing that I want to do with it is to print x, which is a placeholder for each of these items in this list. X, let us say, is an animal. This is a pretty easy example for you to understand. So if I run the code, you see down here it prints cat is an animal, dog is an animal, monkey is an animal, up to leopard. Which means the way for loop works, it executes this code inside here for each of these items in this list. Let us now take this even further. Assuming, for example, I have, let us just change this to be 2, let us change this to be 3, let us change this to be 5, maybe this to be 6. Let us just remove these two. Let us assume, for example, that I need to add 3 for each of these elements in this list. This is whereby the for loops comes in handy. The only thing I'm supposed to do here now, I can just do x plus 2 like that. Then I can print I've added here, and then now I can print here I have added 2 to each item. And now if I run this code, you see it prints 4, 5, 7 and 8, because if you take 2 plus the first 2, which becomes 4, 2 plus the next 3, which becomes 5, 2 plus the next 5, which becomes 7, 2 plus 6, which becomes 8, and it prints all this statement. And now let us take this even further in order to understand better. Assuming I have something like, do you remember how to create a dictionary? Let us say I have a dictionary of, maybe it contains the name of students and their age. Let me just write here age, rather student underscore age is equals, and the way you used to create dictionary, you are using the curly braces. In this case, let's say the first student is Kevin, let us say maybe is 27. The next student, let us call him maybe Jack, and let us say maybe he's 30 years old. And the last student, let us call him maybe Steven, and let us say maybe this guy is too old, maybe 78. And now, how can I loop through this dictionary and be able to print the name and the age of the students? This is very simple. In this case, the only thing I'm supposed to do, I write for, and now I'll pass here two variables. Let us pass name, comma, age, then I'll say in students underscore age dot items. Now, the way this functions, this placeholder here name represents each of these name in this dictionary, and the placeholder age here represents each of these age in this dictionary. And so what I can do something cool like this, print in brackets, and then I can say name, comma, or rather let me say is, then I can print here age, then I can print something like old. So I expect it to print something like Kevin is 25. This should be years old, not old. Kevin is 25 years old. Let us run this code and see what it gives us. And so this should be student. Now let me just remove this fast for loop so that you can be able to see what it prints down here. Now you see it prints Kevin is 27 years old, Jack is 30 years old, Steven is 78 years old. And that is the way you can use the for loop in order to loop through these what we call sets, such as list, dictionary, tuples, and other sequences.